Okay, it's 1 o'clock. I'm ready to start my presentation titled, Where Are You? Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you have enjoyed your lunch. My presentation is called, as I said, Where Are You? And normally that question would be easily answered because I would be standing in front of a room, in front of you, sitting in that room, but these are no normal times. So everybody attends remotely from home or maybe from the office. I have been working from the home office since March 16th, almost 2 months now, obligatory by the government, which is my employer at the moment. And I think many others have the same thing. I will be talking about getting your location from Apex applications. How can you do it and what can you do with it when you have it? And I will also be asking some interaction from you. Normally I would ask something like your experience in Oracle or Apex, but that's not very hard to do at that moment. So I've thought of something else. I'll come to that in a few minutes. First, this is the location where I work now. I need several screens now to see my notes, have the presentation, and see how it looks. And what will you learn today? You will learn actually how to get your location in Apex, the GPS location, so the coordinates, latitude and longitude, how to store it in Oracle, and especially in Oracle Spatial, how to show it on a map, and how to use it for analysis. And I also have a bonus item if there's enough time. Well, first a few words about me. This is me at one of my offices I've worked in the last years. I have 30 years plus experience in Oracle, more than 10 years in Apex, and also more than 10 years I'm self-employed. So I work at very different offices, and I really like my work. You see, I'm smiling here. I'm smiling most of the time. Maybe sometimes I'm thinking and then I don't look like I'm smiling, but still I enjoy my job very much. And another thing I like very much is traveling. So last year I had almost a half a year of travel in Southeast Asia. You see these pictures here of Indonesia. And now I want to get to the part where I ask some interaction from you, if you want to do it. I have made a small application where you can enter your name and your GPS location will be automatically retrieved. You can press save, and later on in your presentation, we can see the location of all the people who have entered this data on a map. So how do you do it? You scan the QR code, which is here to the right of the screen. You open the URL that's included in the QR code. You scan it with your smartphone, sorry. And then you're probably asked for location access. You say yes, otherwise it won't work. You fill in your name and you press save. And this is how the application looks. Very simple. You only have to fill in your name. The latitude and longitude will be retrieved automatically. And when they are retrieved, the save button is enabled and you can save your location. And later on, we can see it. I will have, for the next few slides, I will have the QR code available. So you can also on this slide and the next few slides, you can still use the QR code. This slide is about a warning, and the warning is about JavaScript. Not all Apex developers use JavaScript. Well, we have to use some of it now. I have some I need to explain some things using JavaScript, and some features I show can only be done by JavaScript, but most of the JavaScript is very simple. And I must say, if you really want to leverage the full possibilities of Apex, you need to have some knowledge, at least basic knowledge of JavaScript. Now, what's it all about? How do you know where we are? Before, if you were in a city before the 1980s, you would look at the street signs, you would say, okay, I'm in this street. You would look at the street on a map, and then you could see, eventually you could see your GPS location, your latitude and longitude. Then, since the late 60s, beginning 70s, the Americans have created a global positioning system, which was at first only meant to be used by the military. Of course, it gives you a huge advantage if you know exactly where you are. But there was a tragic event. A Korean airliner was shot down by Russian jets because it entered the Russian airspace. And it didn't know it was entering the Russian airspace because they knew, of course, it was dangerous. But this tragic accident pressed Ronald Reagan to give access to GPS system for civil use. There is still some restrictions to it. The access is less accurate than it is possible. So it's accurate on a few meters, and it can be restricted in times of war, because the Americans, of course, don't want to have their enemies to be able to use the GPS system. How does it work? You have a number of satellites, I think it's 24, encircling the Earth. And by triangulation, you know your location. And here you see these lines indicating, presuming it's kind of direction that you know, but you don't know a direction, but you know the strength of the signal. So you know the distance of the satellites. So there has to be some calculation to know from the position of these satellites where you are. You have to see, or your phone has to see, at least 4 satellites. So then we come to the next step, is how can we use it then? I had a navigation device, specific navigation and TomTom in the 2008, but quite fast afterwards we had the smartphones, which nowadays all have GPS possibility. So all smartphones, as small as they are, have a receiver for GPS signal, and probably most of you will use it daily. Then we have tablets, which are also mobile devices. So location matters, but there are very little tablets who have GPS built in, less than I would have expected. We have our laptops, which we take with us to all places, but almost no laptops have GPS capability built in. Luckily, for a few tens of dollars, you can order a USB device to get you GPS. And you can even have one with a cable that you can put on top of your car, magnetic, so that you have better reception. And then there are, of course, all kinds of other devices, watches, and this is a device I really would like to have, but it's still a bit expensive. Desktops do not have a GPS device built in. And this is logical because normally you don't move them around. So once you know the location of a desktop, it's all right. But anyway, even for desktops, there is a possibility to get your locations through the IP address. And I will show that later on because my demos will be on a desktop and still they will have your location available. So how do we get the GPS location? We need some JavaScript. And since HTML5, we have the, we have the Navigator Geolocation API. This API enables us to use this function, get current position, and it will give us the coordinates of our position on Earth, latitude and longitudes. And an important point is it's asynchronous. I'll get to that later. Now I'll switch to the demo. So this is the last slide with the QR code. So I'll leave it for a few seconds. I'm very curious how many people will have done it. And I'll go to the demo. So the first thing is how to get your location. And you get location. There's a dynamic action behind here that gets the location, and if it's gotten, you will get an alert. You will see here in the URL bar, you'll see this sign, which is indication of GPS location. And you see here, this is my latitude. This is the position I have at this moment. So almost 52 degrees north and 5.6 degrees east. What code do we need to write for that? Very little. We have a function get location. It checks in this way. This is JavaScript, by the way. It checks whether the API is available. If it's not, it gives an alert that it's not available. Otherwise, we call this get current position function, and we tell them if you're ready, if you have retrieved the position, then do this. And what's being done is giving the alert that we just saw. Now, I told you it is asynchronous. And you notice that after pressing the button, it took a few seconds before the location was actually retrieved. Luckily, this is implemented asynchronously. Otherwise, we would have waited all these seconds just for the location to be retrieved. The screen would have been frozen. I can give an example about asynchronicity. Imagine I am working in an office and I want some files from the archive. So I call the person from the archive and I say, can you get me these files? If it would be synchronously, I would stop all my work and I would wait till the person would get to my desk and put the files on my desk. That could be several minutes. I'm not working, not doing anything, just waiting. The same thing with JavaScript. If now let's get back to the example. If I do it asynchronously, I do it naturally. I call the person to get me the files. I go on with my work, and at a certain moment, this person appears next to my desk and says, "Here are the files." So I have not lost any time. The same thing happens in JavaScript. If you have an call an asynchronous function, like this one, you say, if you retrieve, you have to perform this action, and I will go on. So you have here this function write output to this item. We call the get current position, which will write the coordinates to the output. And after this statement, we write after call. If I press the button now, this code will execute, and you see directly after the before call, the after call is done, and after a few seconds, the get current position has retrieved the data and has put it on my screen. You also notice it can take a few seconds, and you have to take that into account when you are designing your program, that it will not be immediately there. Now, we are Apex developers. We want our things in the database, so we want to have it into Apex items, and these are 2 items. I can easily get my location into these items, also using JavaScript. I don't see any code around here, but you can use the Apex item API. Now I'll switch back to the presentation again. A few notes on this using the GPS position. First one is accuracy. It is ideally accurate to a few meters, but the accuracy can be much less in, for example, cities, especially with high buildings. Then it can diminish to more than 100 meters. So don't depend too much on your GPS, or your car might end up in the water like this. Secondly, your site needs to be secure HTTP. Otherwise, you cannot call this get location API. But actually, it's a good thing because your site is much more secure now. Nobody can do any eavesdropping. Third note is on privacy. We have in the EU now a pretty strict Data Protection Act with high penalties. If you collect location data of your customers, of your employees, of anyone, you have to make sure that it's legally allowed to do that, to collect them and to store them. So I'm not an expert on that, but it's just something you have to take care of. And if you want to know some more things about the accuracy, this blog post below here gives a nice overview of the different aspects you have to take care of. Well, until now, we've done things with JavaScript. Of course, Apex enables us to create plugins, and I have created a plugin to to retrieve the location and to put it into Apex items. You can download it from apex.world and import it into an application. And I'll demonstrate that. So first we have the page where here longitude and latitude will be retrieved. If I don't see the sign here, I know I didn't press the button good enough. Now I see this icon of locations being used. We have longitude and latitude, and also we see this switch also reacts on the fact that the location has been found. Well, how do we do it? How do we implement it? We go to apex.world, go to plugins, and we search for GPS, and we have the store location plugin. And then we can download it. I've done it already, and you can load it into your application. have to go to the right application. We go to the shared components, to the plugins repository. And here you can do an import of your plugin. You choose the file that you have downloaded, and then with a few clicks, you have it here, right here. The store location plugin. Then, of course, you want to use it. You're at page 6. And this is a page where we have 2 items, longitude and latitude. We have a button which has no action, dynamic action behind it. You see there's no arrow before it. So I create the action. Normally I would just give it a name, but now I don't want to spend my time on it. So here we have the store location plugin. And if I choose that, I have to say, which item do you want to put the latitude in? And the longitude. I say save. And now this is the other application where maybe you've entered your name. If I press the button, he will retrieve the location. And after a while, he will show the coordinates in the Apex items without any programming. Now I want to do other things also when this location has been retrieved. How do we do that? But we can create another dynamic action, and it will listen to the event is a custom event, and the event is location retrieved from a jQuery element HTML. These are things you can find in the documentation of, I have to do something here, so I'll have some text alerted here. These things like what the custom event is defined, you can find in the documentation of the plugin on GitHub. Now I've changed it. So now if I press it again, nothing will happen because I haven't reloaded the page. So now I do it again. He has cached the GPS location, so he's very fast in giving this alert. And after alert, I see also that latitude and longitude have been retrieved. So in this trigger, in this dynamic action, I could do anything. I could do JavaScript, PL/SQL, show things, show a map, whatever. I will be using this later on also. So now you can get your GPS location and you can define what you can do, want to do with it afterwards. Well, this is what I just told you. Event when location is found, and what we're going to do now is get the address at a location. So this is called reverse geocoding. Geocoding itself is if you have an address, you look up the GPS location of this address. So reverse geocoding is you have a GPS location and you get an address. And we will use the Google API for that. And there are some things you have to do for that, because you have to register, get an API key. I'll get to that a bit later. But for now, I'll show you how it works. So we have the reverse geocoding. We will find an address from a location, and once we find the GPS location at first, and then we'll find the address from the GPS location. So we retrieve the location, and when it's found, it gets this address. This is not the right address. This is because what I just told you, at this moment, my GPS location is retrieved on the desktop, and that is not using a GPS device, but using IP information. But never mind, he had a certain GPS location, and he had retrieved the address. It's called at that time. So how do we do it? I've defined a function getAddress that converts the content of the items latitude and longitude into floats, because this is a standard function given by Google, and it expects latitude and longitude to be float values. I just took this function from Google, cut and paste. As you see, it also has a callback function, so it's asynchronous also. The arguments of this function are the results of the retrieval action. So you have a result with an array of all kinds of data, and the status, we should be okay, otherwise there's an error. And we use the first element of this array to display the address. So there is an item formatted address is part of this first result structure, and that is the address that you can see here. So this is still pretty simple, but it's now we'll go to until now we have talked about coordinate pairs. So I have a latitude, a longitude, and that defines the location where you are on Earth. Now, if you want to have a distance between two coordinates, it's pretty difficult. When you're close, you can do some things with simple arithmetic, but then you assume that the Earth is flat. Some people believe that it's flat. I go for the sphere. And if you go further, it's very hard to have accurate distance. So luckily, Oracle has got the Oracle Spatial, which used to be an option, but it's now integrated into the database. And to use Oracle Spatial, you have to convert your data to special data type, SEO geometry. And this data type can depict points, vectors, and polygons. And you can use it with the constructor SEO geometry. I'll have an example of that in a few minutes. And this SEO geometry type is something that only lives in the database. So on the client side, there is no instance of SEO geometry. So what we have to do if we want to have these points that we want to store into the database, we need to assign these values with this constructor in a trigger. So we hand over the latitude and longitude to the trigger, and then the trigger with the constructor creates SEO geometry element of it. And by the way, these SEO geometry elements can be part of a table. So you can have columns of type SEO geometry. And what's the advantage of using Oracle Spatial? Then you have the access to all kinds of spatial operators. For example, very easily you can have the distance, you can have whether a given point is within a certain polygon, you can have operations on polygons. So do polygons overlap? What is the overlap of these polygons, etc., etc. Even Oracle has now things like routing in the database. Now to a bit of demo again. And then I have to I will store my location now and my address in the database. And I get an error here, unluckily. Okay. I have to correct something here. And I'm afraid it's going to take a long time. I haven't checked on in my query on nil geometry object, and yesterday I was playing a bit around with new things. Oh, I think I know already what happened, because there are a lot of people who have entered their coordinates, but they haven't been, there have been no, yeah, there have been. Apparently he has trouble with the new thing, so I have mixed some functionality. Well, you know how it is when you're developing. I developed this new screen this morning, so but it gives me the opportunity, and let me see whether it's readable, to show the trigger on this. No, I got it on my slides, I think. I don't. Because now I can show the trigger. So I hope it's a bit readable, but here you can see this SEO geometry constructor that takes a few values. 2001 means it's a two-dimensional point. It's a type of object. It's this is the coordinate system, and this is the point, which is a point type, which takes three coordinates: longitude, latitude, and altitude, but we don't have altitude. And this way, this element is created into the database. So it's still pretty simple. and we'll use it later on. Now I will continue to maps, which is, of course, I always like visualization of things. You can have a lot of a table with a lot of data in it. If you created a map of it or a chart, I always liked it. So I like visual clues. And it is made very easy for me and for you also, because Jeffrey Kemp made a great Google Map plugin, a JK64 report Google Map plugin. And it's a region plugin, and you will see it has a base query to retrieve objects with locations, and these are marked on the map. And there are lots of attributes to tweak. And where you don't have attributes to tweak, you can use JavaScript API. So here we have the map. I will get the coordinates of what's supposed to be what the computer thinks is my current position. And now it's plotted. Okay. So now you see my hometown, Wageningen. It says I'm here, but actually I'm about here. You see that I can drag this item from one place to another place. We will use that later on. Also, I will zoom out a bit, because you have all kinds of the controls. You can have the satellite map also. There's a bit of a delay in it. And you can have the zoom in, zoom out functionality. Probably even, well, I didn't try it, but well, this is not exactly where I live. So but you see that functionality also is available. Something happened wrong. And what I wanted to show also, you can activate layers. So you have a traffic layer. Probably you've used that sometimes if you're underway and there are some traffic jams. So you see here, probably in front of traffic lights, there is some red, but for the rest, it's pretty green. And also, if you like cycling, we have a lot of bicycle lanes in Holland. And there are even some like this here, lanes without any adjacent road. So you're just bicycling in the forest without any cars. Very nice. The last thing, these layers, they cannot be defined declaratively. So we need some code for that. Some JavaScript again, but not very much. You define the layers. You retrieve the map object. That's the map itself. You define the layers. You couple the variables to the traffic layer, and then you can enable the layer by this statement. So set map, and disable in this way. So this is the code you put into the positive and negative actions, dynamic actions behind these checkboxes. We can also still have I'm into a problem because of these nil things. So I go to here, You see here we have the source of the map object. So this is where the markers are defined, and I will say, I hope this works. Because what I wanted to do is to, yeah, it still doesn't work. I'm sorry, this one doesn't work. What I wanted to show you is that it's possible. No. I will just plot all the things in my table. Now we will see, if it's all right, we will see all the data you all entered. So that's true. We even have visitors from Finland. That's probably handy. Somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, in Kenya, in Israel, a few. Oh yeah, that's where I visited. I had a presentation for the Israel Oracle user group. But now you see the attendance here plotted on the map. And I should have a name coming up if I wait long enough. But apparently that doesn't work. Well, I see there is a lot of attendees from Germany, some from Switzerland, from Prague. And I will go to Holland now. And then I'll go to my location. What I wanted to show to you is that I have this location. I can drag it, and then I have a dynamic action storing the new value when it's dropped. And then also he gives an alert for the new position. This is just for the demo, but you have the code behind this is right here. Marker dragged is some JavaScript code. I hope it's a bit visible, but it calls an AJAX function with longitude, latitude, and ID. And these are the things I need. I have a certain ID from a row. I want to change latitude and longitude. And then afterwards, the rest is only for the alert. This is possible because in a map, if I go to the attributes of the map, here you have the attribute draggable. That means that I can drag the markers. And I can define a marker dragged dynamic action. The custom event is marker drag. It's just the same as location retrieved. You create a custom event, has a name, and it's on a certain object. In this case, it's on the region. So this means if this event happens, this JavaScript code will be retrieved. If I'm going to requery the same thing, we're gonna move back into here. You see that the marker I dragged from here to here, the new location is stored and shown. Well, it's 1 minute left for me, so I have to keep the bonus for another time. You can see it for yourself if I have to say something about Google API. To use a Google API, you have to register with Google. You get an API key, a very long string you have to put in your application. You also have to supply payment information, because if your usage is over a certain level, you have to start paying. And luckily, I've been doing this for 5 months now. Until now, all my invoices have been zero. You have $200 of credits. And you have to use certain aspects, you have to add the API, certain APIs to the project. So you cannot use every API, you have to select them and you have to use them. Modify the GPS location is what we just saw. GPS location from photo, there's no time anymore to do it. You have the within a photo taken by smartphone, within the EXIF data, you have GPS location. You can retrieve it using JavaScript, and you can plot it also on a map. So this is my contact information. Many of the things I find out, I blog about. And the application I use for demo, you can see here on GitHub. So you can download it, you can install it, and you can do things with it yourself. One of the things which is nice to mention is that this API key, of course, it's worth money, because if I got somebody else's API key, I could misuse it. When I was in Israel and I had the presentation, I uploaded the application, and the API key was still in the application. Within 2 minutes, I got a mail from Google that they found my API key somewhere in GitHub. So they scan the whole internet for uses of the API key, and so I was warned to protect my API key. So that concludes my talk. So Tobias, are there any questions?
Yeah, Dick. So thank you first for your presentation. It was really inspiring. We have a few questions. The first question from Hakemi: can we ask from JavaScript to activate mobile position? Notify if GPS is deactivated.
I don't know what exactly she means with mobile precision, but the API is rather limited. So you can get your current position. There's also a possibility to track your position, but it's quite limited, I must say. So you cannot ask the same things that you can do within a mobile application.
Okay, I think that was the question. Another question: how many geolocation API calls does Google allow per month? Not which are for free.
That's not exactly to be answered. You get $200 of free usage, and then you have a rate of, what was it, $5 for 1,000 reverse geolocation lookups. I don't know how it is with Google Maps. So it will be about the same thing. So it depends on what kind of calls you make. But it's pretty much, I think. You have to have a pretty serious application. You can find it all in the Google documentation, but it depends on which kind of calls you make and how many, of course.
Okay, then there's the last question. Can you share this app?
I will bring it back. You have here is there the link to the application on GitHub. So you can download it from there, and you can install it on your own location or in apex.oracle.com. So it's available, and
well,
I presume the slides will be up for on the Apex Connect site. Is that true?
Yeah, we will show all records. I mean, every presentation is being recorded, and we will show the records.
Okay,
So
of course. Yeah, even
don't
better.
think we will need slides then. Anyhow,
Yeah.
that was it. We got a few thanks for your presentation. I will send that to you later on. And
Okay.
well, thank you for your presentation, and well, see you soon, hopefully.
Yeah,
Somewhere.
in person. I
Yeah,
hope so.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it was a
Thanks.
pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.